Listen, I quit therapy. And this time I'm never going back.
Except for that slight improvement around the shooting. She wasn't doing you much good anyway.
It was all her fault. Welcome, my friends, to Cut to Black, a Sopranos sit-down. My name is Jim Scampoli, and I've seen every single episode of The Sopranos.
My name's Jacob Burrows, and I've seen all but one episodes of The Sopranos.
Exciting.
That's a shiver down my spine. This one, though, is called Blue Comet. It's episode 20, season 6, the penultimate episode. Jim, who put this episode together?
This episode was written by series creator and showrunner David Chase with the help of Matthew Weiner, also directed by Alan Taylor. Sopranos namestays, names we've heard many a times. I do believe they say, this was Chase's 29th writing credit. I mean, also the creator of the show. This is Matthew Weiner's 12th and final. I'm not sure how many episodes Taylor directed. Although reading about it, it sounds like, not to take anything away from Alan Taylor, but it sounds like David Chase would sit him down and be like, all right, we're going to do this, 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 and this, all right? Go. I mean, maybe that's just general for TV when you have a showrunner, where you got to keep the tones and the look and everything, like especially something like The Sopranos doesn't have wildly different stylistic choices, but it does seem like David Chase has got his hand in everything.
It looks like he directed 9 episodes, the first one being Pax Soprana, but then there was a sort of break, and he came in and did 1 in season 4, 1 in 5, and then like loads and loads here in season 6.
Yes, and hey, we're getting there. We're getting down to the end. So we got some action now. We got some mob action. Are you satisfied? Are you satisfied
I've been
now?
fucking waiting, sitting through this bullshit, Jim, doing this shit podcast, waiting for some fucking people to get got. And finally it happens. Penultimate episode. Bit late if you're asking me.
Yes.
I jest. I like The Sopranos just the way it is. Did I? Yes, I did text you this one as well, right?
You did, yes.
Yeah, because I've been sending messages, live reactions at times, and this one was just, fuck me. This episode, Jim, fuck me. And I sent the screenshot of AJ saying, this is really depressing to me.
Which is great, because now I have that saved in my phone, because that's just a good meme image to use as response to things. It's just...
I accidentally set it as my desktop background, and guess what? I haven't changed it since. So I'm still in that mood.
And, before we get into the episode, we did get an email. You can send an email to showswhatyouknowshow@gmail.com from Brad here. I heard your recent talk about Tony Soprano doing peyote with the hottest woman on the show. I don't know if we deemed that, but I mean, I guess, she's one of the hottest women on the show. When
Brad thinks so, at least,
yes. I've done peyote before, too. I was out in the mountains in Colorado. It lasted around 36 hours. One of the last things you want to do is be in a casino. Too many people, too loud, too many lights. I know it's just a TV show, but Tony would have killed himself if he had hallucinations for 36 hours. I really love the podcast, and I've listened to every episode. Keep up the great work, guys. Always nice to hear some personal experiences to what we're seeing on the show. And sure. I guess it would make sense that it could last. I mean, when you eat obviously there's a lot of drugs, drugs on the show, whether he's smoking weed or shooting up heroin or smoking crack or whatever, but...
All equivalent to me, Jim.
Yeah, but...
all illegal and should be... Just destroy all the drugs. Go on.
Well, when you eat like an edible, whether it be, I guess, peyote, which I've never done, but if you've eaten like marijuana edibles, it does have a different effect and can last in your system for a longer time, because it is like, you're digesting it, it's going through your body. So I guess 36 hours. Interesting take. I do think, Tony, I think everyone's trip's going to be a little different. To Tony, he doesn't want to be in the mountains of Colorado. He wants to be in that hell casino because he's going to think he's in heaven for some reason. But anyways.
Well, and especially when he went, though he did seem to enjoy it better when he was out looking at the sun and that,
very
and it flashed
true.
And all. Though, and I'm still impressed that they drove there. I don't know if I mentioned, but their car was just there, and I'm like, okay, I guess they just drove there. Great shout. Yeah, I can't imagine a lot of drugs that would be great for your casino times. I guess except coke and the wonderful drug of alcohol.
Yeah, because
But yeah,
very
in
it's like
general, all the flashing lights and stuff, I find it
yeah.
a bit much when I'm not on loads of drugs.
Yeah, it's very stimulating. I do want to call out real quick at the top of the show, and I mean we'll probably mention it at the end of this episode as well, that the next episode, before we discuss the finale, we will revisit the pilot. So we'll be discussing the pilot next and then getting into the finale. So just a nice little bonus for you, I'd say, where we want to take a look at the beginning before we get to the end. And, you know, like we had mentioned in previous episodes, we'll still probably be doing other things, like whether it be revisiting certain episodes, or I think we might want to take a look at some of the other works of David Chase, James Gandolfini, gangster movies in general, or things that kind of Sopranos adjacent, and maybe discuss them in relation to the Sopranos. So you ain't getting rid of us quite yet, but yes, it's very exciting that we're so close to the finale.
Yeah, it obviously won't be a weekly thing.
Yes.
To be fair, some listeners might say, is it even now a weekly thing?
Yeah.
Fair. Okay, we've had a couple of breaks. Get off our back. But but we will definitely pop some things in here from time to time in this podcast feed. So don't go scrubbing your podcatcher just yet. Keep us on there. See what might come at you. See what you might enjoy. But anyway, let's get into this episode, Jim. There's
sorry, one other quick thing.
Sure.
I do want to. Kyle had tweeted at us. Shout outs to Kyle, and he did say, where was it? We got to find our next rewatch though, because we're almost done. So I do welcome you, Kyle, for whatever we go in the future. Come along for the ride with us, and you, dear listener, also. Or if you have suggestions, shows that we should get into, either shoot us a review on Cut to Black or send us an email at showswhatyouknowshow@gmail.com.
Absolutely, and you can always find more coverage and all sorts of rides at showswhatyouknow.com. So smaller rides, most of them, where we discuss a show with just an episode or two, but, you know, we cover things like The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel and Stranger Things and Game of Thrones, but we don't talk about Game of Thrones anymore because nobody does and nobody likes it, but we, you know, it's there if you want to revisit it. So lots of stuff going on. But, Jim, I am eager to get into this episode.
Yes, let's get down to it. It opens with a good old whacking, right? We haven't seen one of those in a while. I guess maybe we have seen some.
No, it's true, and I will say this: the amount of times that The Sopranos has made me double check that I'm on the right episode. It's just, you know, tried and true method of dropping you in the middle of something. But like to this point, I'm like, who's this guy? What's happening? Why is Silvio killing this guy? Like,
yes.
I'm guessing that I'm supposed to have that feeling of like I'm supposed to put the pieces together, and I pretty much do. Like, I just assume this is a guy who's too friendly with New York or whatever. But still, I have that moment, which is always great because it means that the show is trusting you to jump a step further than you expect it to, and for you to keep up.
Yeah, and I was reading about the production of this episode. They do mention that there's a deleted scene where this guy is more like properly introduced. I mean, there's a line later on where like when Silvio goes to Tony and he does mention that he was getting too close to New York, but I guess there was more of a thing about how this guy was trying to recruit Silvio because he was also basically feeding information to New York. But they're like, fuck it, we'll just drop right in and like trust the audience to go with it, and you'll pick up the context later on as the episode continues.
Yeah. And as far as like openings, it starts with that, and then immediately we have the meeting with Phil and his his number 2 and number 3, in the same way that Sil and Bobby are Tony's number 2 and 3. And he talks through what they're going to do about the glorified crew. And I love that one of his objections is like, when they make someone over there, they don't even have like a sword and scepter or whatever the fuck. That's his objection. Like, they don't, no respect for the rules.
And I don't have confirmation on this, but I imagine it's very similar to, there's like the Sopranos tale of how a real mafia don mentioned to one of the writers or David Chase or something, because they saw that Tony was wearing shorts in one of the episodes, and he's like, a Don doesn't wear shorts, and they use that line in the show. I feel like they'd have that Christopher episode where it showed him getting made, and someone who was really, and it's like, ah, man, this is all wrong. And then they were like, let's work that in. It's even a thing that New York thinks is lame. I mean, again, I don't have confirmation, but I just have a feeling that maybe that's from a real place somewhere.
Yeah. So they're doing a bit of arguing about what to do, and Phil says, forget this and forget that, where it's still like Anthony Soprano has no respect for this thing, and they're saying like take out management and they'll just absorb the whole thing. And I guess the weird thing is where we've been with the Sopranos for so long that it's like maybe they are just a glorified crew. What will happen if these guys are taken out? Like we've seen so many characters drop anyway that basically if Bobby, Sil, and Tony are gone, I don't feel like there's loads of characters with enormous loyalty to them who are just going to go, no, fuck it.
Yeah.
So maybe they're right. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, because Chris is already gone. Because I mean, he not that he was like management, but he would have been like a wild card. Because even despite Chris's troubles being a junkie, he was always ready to get the Scarface final scene, fucking bazookas under each shoulder. He would be a liability. Paulie, you do have to imagine Paulie's loyal, but yeah, if they were just gone, he would also think about his survival. He would probably fall in line. So yeah, it does make sense. A quote from this scene that's people bring up a lot, like just in Sopranos, like Reddit and Facebook and stuff, is when Phil says, I'm going to say a couple of three things. Just a fun Phil thing that he says. Let me tell you a couple of three things.
Yeah. I like his line that's like, there's 5 fucking families, and then we got this other pygmy thing over in Jersey.
Yeah.
And I'm still like trying to understand what he means. I guess it's small. It's a small thing, so no. And he also says there's no scraps in my scrapbook. He has a lot of lines in this scene.
That's great.
Yeah.
Now
they come to a. Do they say here they're going to take them all out within 24 hours or whatever? We have this set up, right?
I believe so. Yeah. I mean, he does mention kind of like where Phil's coming from does make sense because he brings up kind of these past misgivings by the Soprano, or I guess they're the DeMeo crime family technically, because. We had Fat Dom, who Silvio and Carlos stabbed to death and then made him disappear. Then, before that, of course, was Phil's brother Billy, which was handled, but, not handled to his liking. Tony wouldn't give up his cousin. And then, of course, we had Coco not too long ago. So, things have been brewing. And, yeah, I do believe there's still kind of a question because there's that one guy who I don't know his name. And he's just kind of like, war, what are you talking about? What are we going to do? Take out a boss? You serious? Yeah. But, of course, Butchie, because he's the new Phil, and Phil was the new Johnny, and so on. So, of course, Butchie's like, let's do it. We're going to go for it.
Yeah. Yeah, so starting another storyline for this episode, we have AJ in his recovery place in the hospital. Which is basically the set of it's kind of a funny story where they have a quirky romance in like the mental ward, which is what they're having here now because he goes up to this girl and asks if she still hangs out with Hernan. So I guess she may have been around there, or I don't know if she was actually on the show or not, but maybe she was one of the ones saying silly things about his dad or whatever. Maybe not.
Yeah, I can't remember either. I assume she probably wasn't in those scenes. And one thing I want to say is like I think this show we've been very pro AJ, in comparison, especially to a lot of Sopranos opinions and podcast discussions, whatever. But I am kind of in agreement at this point when there's only 2 episodes left. I'm not interested in AJ meeting a new girl. Like, it feels so late for something like this to kind of happen. And again, I don't even really remember where this goes or what the payoff is, so I am in new ground. But my initial thought watching this, I'm like, come on, man, things are heating up. Although, but also I should be trained at this point because this is very Sopranos to be like, ooh, war's brewing, New York, remember? We've been doing this for 3 years. What's AJ up to? Who's this girl he's meeting? Let's learn about her.
To be fair, Jim, I just looked it up, and this girl has been in several episodes, Johnny Cakes and Cold Stones.
Right.
We saw this character in before. But yeah, I still see where you're coming from. They have a little flirtatious conversation there, and Tony and Carmela come on in. Tony's hemming and hawing over the bill, and Yeah, I think that pretty much they're looking in and seeing him at least playing some video game with this girl. So I guess that makes Tony feel maybe a little bit better about spending 2,200 a fucking day.
That's insane. That's insanity.
I don't know, all of your US like media, it's always like I'm not able to tell, Jim. Like cuz for hospitals, it seems like if you break a leg, you are dead not from the leg, but from financial bankruptcy.
Yeah.
This is not the case.
Yeah, that seems to be, and it's only getting worse. But
okay, cool.
Let's get back to The Sopranos.
Now, let's get political, Jim. It's an election year, and we need to have these discussions. Right. Yeah, again, no frame of reference for it, because everything just seems to cost, based on movies and television, it's just like, yeah, thousands and thousands of dollars, and people don't get an ambulance because they would just be ruined. So that's fun. Anyway.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I guess it ties in because it's very similar to later on when Janice shows up because Junior's money is running out, and because you have this facility that AJ is privileged enough to be in that is $2,200 a day, but if you're not that well off and can afford that, you can go to a shitty state-run place somewhere where it's not going to be as nice, not going to be as let's chill and have a meet cute with a girl from your neighborhood. So you can see how that goes.
Yeah, that makes sense. Speaking of meet cutes, the next scene here we have Tony meeting up with Agent Harris, who gives him a little warning after, again, another bit of hemming and hawing. He definitely hesitates. I feel like Agent Harris went there to share this information.
Yeah.
And then, like, I don't remember the exact conversation there, but...
he mentioned something about, like, didn't we used you guys to... was it during, like, World War II or something? Something about, like, using the mafia... like it's kind of like a passive aggressive, like it annoys Tony because then he just goes and gets his gabagool and kind of, I mean, I don't want to call it a storm out because you'd have to leave that facility, so I wouldn't put it on the board. But he leaves with his gabagool, and then Agent Harris, I agree. I think he went there to give this tip, but I guess he's still kind of conflicted. Am I helping a criminal? Is he the new Melfi? Is there going to be another season? Maybe. Yeah. But yes, he does give him a tip that, there's some rumblings. This thing with New York could be back on. And I like this partnership that they have. This like almost quasi-friendship.
Yeah, it's not what you'd expect early on in the show. And Tony's upset enough to dump his whole bag of gabagool, which after 6 seasons, I still have no idea what that is, Jim. But he gets rid of it anyway.
Oh, you don't know gabagool? It's Capicola.
No, I don't know what that is either.
It's just like it's like a slice, like a deli meat.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm with you on that. Okay, I'm with you on that. Gabagool, Capicola. Yeah. But he got it on a sandwich, right? Is it a sandwich?
Yeah, he did get a sandwich, yeah. He got himself a good old sandwich.
Now, not only did I not know what that was, to the point where when he said gabagool, can I have some gabagool? I was like, oh yeah, that's not just a word we say and it's fun. I'm sorry, everyone. I just thought it was a fun word. But okay, let's move on. So Tony's understandably a little bit rattled. I'm guessing the next scene's got to be when Syl comes to him and tells him what's going on, right?
And he tells him about, I guess, Bert is the guy that he killed. And Bert was trying to sway guys to the new management. And he wants him to get Bobby because they got to hit first. And, this is almost, I mean, I think they kind of point this out in the Sopranos session. It kind of points out, or it makes Phil's point in a way, because they completely bumble this. Like, it's a complete failure. So it does make the Sopranos crew look like, basically a glorified crew, not a family. Because, the idea is right. Like, all right, well, they're going to come for us. Well, we're going to get them first. Let's get our top guys together. And it doesn't work out very well.
Yeah, because Tony reverts back to this plan of, like, getting someone over from the old country, where last time the guy you brought over from the old country almost pushed you in a propeller and fucked your wife. And you're like, yeah, let's do that again. You just narrowly avoided that outcome. In this scene, I have to say, Jim, halfway through, I'm still, for a second, like, when's Chris going to roll through?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Fucking old habits, man. I still expect Chris to come in. And then I'm like, oh no, that is never happening again. Oops,
Yep.
oops, oopsie. And yeah, I'd say at the start of this scene, Tony's kind of trying to downplay, or I mean, he's talking about like AJ's spills still. He doesn't want to talk about this serious stuff, but still bringing this up. As he says, it dovetails with some other information that he's gotten. So it's basically all confirmed. And they do a cut that is kind of interesting where they're just talking about Phil, and then they cut to the restaurant later, and they're talking about how they got a hit first and that.
At the restaurant.
yeah.
Then the music from, I mean, I know it's probably other music, but as I know it and as Tony knows it from the way he reacts, it's the music from Raging Bull because they start slow motion shadow boxing. I mean, it's fun. Like, this is a great moment if they're victorious, but it's almost like, yeah, we did it, you know, and very premature here. It's just it is a fun way to end this scene.
I feel like it's a way to say goodbye to these characters as well.
Yeah.
You know, we're getting to that point, and it's kind of like showing that they're good friends too, and not just talking about business or whatever. And it kind of helps take focus away from as well, like Bobby and Tony's fight. Like, they're very casual here, and like Silvio and Tony, they've not like Silvio's just been telling Tony news that he doesn't want to hear for the past 3 seasons, I feel. So it's nice to give them just a little fun moment instead of all this heavy shit.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I guess and then we got back to New York, and this is where they're kind of laying out the full plan here.
Yes.
3 pops. Someone says, like, what about Paulie? But they say not him, right? Now,
yes.
I guess it's kind of more of an offhand, like, yeah, who cares? He's not important enough, or they just know that if it shakes out to their plan, he won't be a problem?
They say, like, no, management. Because they say, hit the top 3 guys, Tony Soprano, and they're kind of surprised that Bobby would be third, or someone is, and the other, I think he says, like, so what? You used to be sell laser printers or whatever as well, because Bobby used to be Junior's driver. Yeah. But it is interesting how Bobby's come along. Too bad this is the end of the road, or should I say track? We'll get into it.
Yes.
But yeah, this is the equivalent scene. So we have 2 like opposing scenes racking up the tension of this is what's being planned in Soprano camp, and this is New York camp. And obviously they can't all succeed. So, yeah. We're moving on and back at the Soprano house where AJ's back home now, and he's kind of back to watching depressing news. Doesn't seem fully okay.
Carmilla hit his belt because it's like, you know, he's suicidal. It's like he's a prisoner. You don't want to find him hanging in his closet from his belt. And Meadows
probably the right thing to do, but wouldn't it also be the right thing to do to say, like, yeah, no, your belt's not there, instead of saying it must be up there somewhere?
Yeah, act like they're trying to pretend like everything's okay, but, you know, clearly it's not. And yeah, he just turns on PBS, and it's just war, depressing stuff on the news, so who knows? Who knows where that's going to go? But then we have Tony. This again, you know, call Italy, let's get some cousins over. You know, things are still brewing. They're still heating up. Who's going to hit first? Who's going to come out victorious? And then we're back at Melfi dinner. We haven't seen Melfi in her personal life in a long time.
Yeah. So the study that, what's his name again? Why do I forget?
Elliot? Yeah.
Elliot brought up this study last episode, and the study's brought up here, and Melfi basically takes on the character of the audience, or at least of myself, and goes, can we never talk about anything the fuck else, Elliot? Or just in general, like, because, like, I imagine Melfi going about her life and things happening in it that are, like, thematically relevant, that are not related to Tony Soprano, like, directly, that could, like, be linked by theme or whatever. It feels like all of her scenes outside of therapy are just directly talking about Tony Soprano. And this might be a reaction, I don't know, from the writers, because I swear there were scenes like that in the first couple of seasons where we were seeing more of what's Melfi up to, and everyone hated it, I'm pretty sure. So I guess that's why they can never talk about anything else. But Elliot's a real cunt in this scene anyway.
Yes, yeah. He's it's like a pompous intervention, and then he basically does just like out her patient. Like, I guess the gloves are off now because what he tries to be all like witty about it. What he's like, does it like in a Jeopardy, like a lead belly / opera singer or whatever the fuck he says, and they're like Tony Soprano, because usually it's always like talking around it, patient X, but I guess does he mean well?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's there to be well-meaning here? I mean, he's read this study, or this other person's read this study, or whatever, and he's read. I don't even know. I don't know who these people are, Jim. But there's this study, right? And it's gonna make Melfi go crazy and kick Tony out. So he really needs to get it in front of her, I guess, is the point of this scene. But I feel like that's. Like, he literally breaches doctor-patient confidentiality there, and that's, like, illegal, but his argument is, come on, we're all professionals here.
Yeah.
Like, this is like a little conference. It's not like we're actually, like, I don't know, I'm so annoyed with Elliot, but I guess he's not going to be in the show anymore, probably, because there's just one episode left, so he had to go out on a high note.
And, I think then there's the line, like, all Italians have big noses.
Yes.
And then she's like, kind of a common thing you even hear now still. Like, if I said that about some other, group, that'd be a big deal. And they're like, well, no, I mean, like, wine. Like, they can...
Nope. But I genuinely believe that that's what the person meant, though, when you say talking about an Italian wine. Because, talking about how a wine is on the nose or whatever is a thing I've heard. So I'm like, oh, did Melfi just fuck up?
But, yeah, things are heating up. I mean... I do feel like this is a bit clumsy, in general, the way, even when he initially brings up the article to then bringing it up again here, at least he had his big water bottle before. Yes. I wish he had it still at this dinner, which would be great. It's a bit clumsy. It does make sense. I do wish maybe there was just a little bit more seeds, and maybe this kind of was like building up over episodes, but then again, I can't see where else you would fit it in, so I guess I understand. It's like they have this therapy thing. The show's going to end. How are we going to come to a head here with therapy? The payoff scene when they have, assumingly, their last session, I think is almost worth it. But yeah, it is a little bizarre the way, and even outside of just every time we see her outside of her life, they're talking about Tony Soprano. It just feels like it's very shoehorned in.
Yeah, this scene is here to bring Melfi to the point where she needs to get to, and that is where I would agree that it's a bit clumsy. That scene in itself is good, they could have maybe spaced it out a bit more, but like, we haven't checked in with Melfi in so long that I don't know how that would have worked either.
Yes.
So the next couple of scenes are like, it's the whole Soprano hit being organized with Paulie being brought in and getting very aggro towards Bobby, and then we intercut and sort of see Melfi reading this criminal personality with lots of really close-up shots of things that seem to relate a lot to Tony, and then sort of cut to this mission being delegated step by step, and it's like a game of telephone, how things get further and further away, which is good for insulating yourself, I suppose, legally, but bad in that it just gets totally fucked up because the people doing it have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah, and also, like, Paulie I guess there's kind of no choice if you're already targeted, but, Paulie seems pretty smart about this, where he's like, because he remembers, he mentions I got through the 70s by the skin of my balls, or whatever, I guess referencing past, the mob wars. And, we've heard other characters kind of mention, like, it's not good for business, not good for money. Obviously, you want to avoid this, but I guess there is kind of no choice. But, yeah, Paulie's not happy. He doesn't want to be involved in this shit.
Yeah, and also, he's always been a little close with the New York, hasn't he? Always been a bit friendly. How did he hear about that joke, eh? Hey, Paulie?
I wonder.
Let's get into it. Let's get on a boat trip. But yeah, he says that it might get out of control. and leaves it at that and passes it off to, what's his name, Patsy or whoever, and then they get the drug addict guy who
Yeah.
used to do drugs with
Which is
with Chris.
already like an immediate red flag of like, oh no, this guy's involved,
Yeah.
because it's like he's the only guy they know that speaks Italian, so they bring
Yes.
him in to bring in the cousins. And I didn't double check. Are these the same guys that had the watch and all that came in before to do
Not
the hit
sure.
that they had?
Could be. Not sure, though.
I should have checked.
But before we get to the botched hit, we have the actual potential last therapy scene where Melfi is coming in with a lot of snark, a lot of sarcasm, a lot of like, oh,
Yeah.
which is not great. Even if you've decided to end a professional relationship in the therapy sense, it's still like you really lose a lot of respect for Melfi here, right? You gotta.
Yes and no, because I feel like with the time she's put in, she kind of has earned this moment. I mean, she's doing it obviously in a passive-aggressive way, but, you know, she feels manipulated. And as she brings up, like, you know, you don't respect what I do or the science that I support. I mean, I guess getting into the actual history, you know, we delved into how she kept him around to feel safe. You know, she was going to end it long ago, but then, of course, the rape happened, and it was this safety net that Tony was around and that option.
I don't remember it like that at all, because you know the episode very clearly showed that she would not do that, and I never got the feeling.
No, I'm sorry. You misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm not saying that it wasn't an actual option she would take, but remember, she just liked the idea of it. Not that I'm saying
Sure.
she would ever tell him, but I remember she talked about her dream and how he was kind of like the guard dog or whatever. And because like the whole thing was she was going to basically refer him to someone else and stop seeing him professionally. But when that happened, and it was like a traumatic experience. Like she talked about how like just the fact that he would be there, it was like made her feel kind of safer for some reason.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I get what you're saying. Like she's very snippy, and then she kind of brings up this magazine thing, which I kind of love that detail because it is, you know, a micro version of Tony not giving a fuck about anyone else. And I like that we know these are real things Tony's talking about, because he's talking about AJ still and his depression, and you know how he feels about Meadow going into law instead of being a doctor, and how that was something he wanted. But seeing it through Melfi's eyes, it starts to come off as like, is he playing a character? Does he feel these things? You know, at the very least, outside of the study, she has been asking him the question, like, you know, what do you get out of this? And she has already been feeling that maybe not wasting her time, but where is this going? Because they've kind of broached the subject a few times within the past few episodes.
Yeah, you said sort of yes and no to if one would maybe, you know, think less of Melfi for how she's acting here. And I think this might be the one reason I think it would have been good to have a bit more of Melfi and where she's at instead of just having the study, because to me it seems really shallow that she just reads this study and she's like AJ just watching the news and suddenly all she can talk about is Lebanon or whatever. And true. She's read this study and like, oh my god, it like totally matches, setting aside the 6 years of experience. And there have been definite actual breakthroughs, but she just, all of that goes to the side because she reads some really close-up words, which again, I do like this scene, but maybe there needed to be a bit more to build up this frustration within her instead. But yeah, this is basically where she's at. I felt that if she was at that point, she could have said, you know, started with the I'll refer you to someone else instead of letting the therapy continue and then sort of be a bit snippy throughout.
Could the argument be made, though, that this is the only way to get Tony Soprano to not come back? Like if, you know, if she just tried to do the professional thing of, not that I feel like that she's knowingly doing that. It's not like, you know, in movies where, to protect your friend, you have to be a dick to him type deal, where it's like, hey,
she's throwing rocks at the dog of Tony in her dream, is what you're saying.
Yeah, just go, dog. Get out of here, But I guess maybe there's an element of, this is the main way to really get him to leave, is you kind of have to be Tony Soprano to him in a way.
The way I could read that is that less about him and more about her. She's been very beating around the bush-y about the whole thing, about like wanting to be his therapist and not, and frustrations and everything. So this would be a way for her to ensure that she actually closes that door for good. Because if she just canceled and said, "Sorry, I'll have to refer you to someone else," maybe I'd say the reason she should stop being his therapist is the way she's acting in this session rather than all the other stuff, because she's not able to do it anymore competently. So maybe maybe that's how the scene could have ended, instead of like just, throwing words at each other like, "Oh, I've lost all I've lost all professionality in this, so you need to see someone else."
I mean, and also kind of the build up to this too has been Tony talking about how he's quitting therapy. In the previous few episodes, he's like, "Yeah, I came here to quit. I don't, this is not like, I don't want to do this." But then, of course, the AJ thing happened. So, is there also just a version of Tony where, very similar to what Melfi had said to Tony a long time ago about his marriage, is like, she might leave you, but you'll never leave her. There's always going to be an AJ committing suicide that's going to keep Tony in therapy. But we do just need to call up that he's going to chalk this all up to female menopausal situations.
That could also be it. Let's be honest. Yeah. Really, that's a great way to end her. Like, I don't know, to like we said, it becomes more of a verbal sort of sparring thing. Even if he genuinely doesn't mean it that way, it's a big fuck you from him.
But also, is this almost similar to later on? Like we mentioned how, you sent me that screen grab of AJ when he's like, "This is very depressing to me," and even though I don't feel like he's lying, I feel like I'm like, yes, Tony, grab this motherfucker, throw him around, because I feel like he's being so selfish about it. Mm-hmm. Because he's making it about himself. I don't know what jumping around, but like after Bobby dies, he's making it about himself. So in a weird way, it's similar to Tony here when he's just always complaining. But then again, if you're a therapist, you're supposed to be able to deal with that. It's like, this guy is always fucking complaining. He won't shut up.
You're saying that Melfi is the Tony in this situation, and he's rattling around Tony like AJ, like Tony rattles AJ later. I guess that's possible. But either way, the important thing is he puts the recipe back. Or no, does he not? Yes, he does. With a little flourish. I love his hand movements as he's sort of daintily putting it in and walking off. And I got to call out, there's like 2 doors in between there, and the edit at the end is kind of Melfi's in one door, and it cuts and she's closing the other door. I'm pretty sure, because I watched it a couple of times, and it felt a little bit jarring, but it's a little jump cutty. But it goes with the whole pace of the episode, which, like, we've been talking about it for 40 minutes and we're not even half an hour in because there's so much going on.
Yes, yeah. I mean, you got to go for the symbolic door close. And I was almost debating on this is a storm out, but it's not a storm out because he's kicked out, correct?
Yeah, but for old time's sake, maybe? Yeah. I don't know. Like, it's not going to catch up. I feel like, does she tell him to leave?
Actually, good question. Does she tell him to leave?
Well, she does stand up, I'm pretty sure, before he stands up. She talks about how he doesn't respect the body of work, building up the science.
She does go and open the door, so she is kind of basically telling him to leave, because she walks over to the door and opens it.
Oh, so what you're saying is that Melfi storms out.
This, you know what? For as much as you can storm out of your own office, I'm going to allow that. And I feel like
we're going to allow that.
I
want to hear that sounder one last time, Jim.
I feel like, let me pull up the old counter here because we got ourselves.
Fuck you.
Oh, wait, hold on. I need the audio up on that. Sorry, people. Let me fix that.
That's all right.
Fuck you.
So let's get it up on 18 on the storm out board, 76 on the death count. We didn't miss a death yet, did we?
We did, but I mean, I assumed we were tallying them up at the end of the episode, but we
stop.
did miss the garroting at the start. Do you want to play that one now?
Let's go ahead and get let's get that death on there.
Gatsada Malanga!
Gatsana Malanga, indeed.
So 77 on the deaths so far.
Wow. Yeah, so goodbye, Melfi. I don't want to speculate on if we'll see her again, because I've been in this haze, Jim, where I'm like, Sopranos can no longer be spoiled, and I'm on the Wikipedia, and it's like, final appearances, this character.
Yes.
I'm like, and it's scrolling away, so I don't know. I don't want to say anything about it, if she's going to be in the next one or not. We'll just leave it.
Yes.
And move on for now. So we have the botched murder, and they're all speaking Ukrainian, but, it's all Greek to these Italians, and they just shoot the hell out of them. And it is, I guess, Phil's Guma. This is Phil's Guma and her dad. Am I understanding that right?
Yeah, I wasn't clear on that, actually, until, I think I was perusing the wiki myself, and, they were like, it's, I guess it's that extra parallel that Phil's Guma, he looks like her dad. So, make of that what you will.
Yeah, maybe she needs some of that therapy, am I right?
Yeah.
So we have an actual game of telephone following where the assassins are calling the Italian-speaking drug addict guy who's in his office, a.k.a. a porn video shop, and sort of talk about the Ukrainian, and he's kind of like, whatever. Passes it on again to Patsy. Is that his name?
Yeah, Patsy. Yep. Yeah. And there's just a lot of like, so did he speak Ukraine? And then everyone's just like, how the fuck should I know? No one wants to follow up on this or look into it at all. They're just like, great, mission successful. We did it.
Yeah. Yeah. And we get a scene at Vesuvio's where Tony tells Carmela that he's not going back to therapy, and she sort of downplays it a bit. She wasn't doing you much good anyway. Would you agree, Jim?
I would disagree. I think she was doing him. She's doing him pretty well. Although I guess, to Melfi's point, he was becoming a better criminal as well. But I think we did make some progress with Tony, but I think it's also argued he's a worse person now than he was in the beginning, so maybe she wasn't doing him any good.
Yeah, fair. They talk about Meadow and how she's not going to be in law anymore, and Carmela says that, does compassion really come naturally to her anyway? Patience?
Well, actually,
I'm not so sure.
And before that, doesn't Tony say AIDS? Doesn't
Yes, that's right. Why they're happy. We're so relieved. It's great because they're like, oh, is she not doing medical school anymore? And obviously, well, I'm not sure about Carmela, but I assume they're both like, oh, fuck.
Yes.
But they're like, oh, we're so relieved. And the first thing Tony can think of is like, with the AIDS and all. It's great not to be a doctor when there's AIDS.
Yeah, and then Carmela, we were talking about this before we started recording because she starts talking about, her empathy and, does she have it in her? And then Tony's just like, what? Well, but I forgot that I was also like, what? When Tony was talking about AIDS. So yes. They don't have their stories straight, clearly. And it's clearly they're not that excited about it. But then again, I guess there could be potential if she's a criminal law. Maybe she could help Tony down the line. Who knows? Yeah,
so like when Carmela says that Meadow maybe doesn't have the empathy or compassion or whatever, Tony's like, what are you talking about? And it's not addressed.
Yes.
I guess because they're in front of Artie and that. But do you think, does Carmela actually think this, or is she just spinning a yarn?
I think she's spinning a yarn. I think they're both, let down,
I don't know. I'm pretty sure Tony's actually concerned about the AIDS.
And I guess that's her more elaborate take than just, the AIDS scare that you might get AIDS because you're a doctor.
Yeah. And I mean, similarly, they lie about AJ because they ask how AJ's doing, and they're like, oh, he's good. And they're like, great. And they're just smiling and nodding. And feels like a far cry from, not that they've ever been that close, but it's not like they're actually sharing anything here. They're just putting up appearances.
Well, I didn't even really think of it that way until now, but it's definitely a departure from the relationship. I mean, they went to high school together, and like you said, it's not like they were super close, but there was much more of a closer relationship than what we're seeing here.
Yeah, and I get the feeling when I'm watching this episode that characters are kind of coming on stage doing their bows.
Yeah.
I don't know if we'll see Artie again, but it felt like much, similar to Melfi's scene that they're kind of like coming up. Here we are. Remember us two characters, and we're gonna see where like this is us checking out, and we're checking out at a point where we're less close than we ever were, and things are still kind of superficial and whatever. And that's the end of our storyline. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks. See you later. So then what? Paulie and Silvio get the news. Oh yeah, because they're kind of like, yes, we did it, and then
They literally get the news. Yeah.
yes, yeah,
The newspaper.
Murmur shows up. Murmur's still hanging around. That's his bow. I assume.
Yeah.
Assume we're not going
I
to
guess
see him.
he's there.
And he's like, "Who's this guy look like? Isn't this hilarious?" So yeah, that didn't quite go as planned. And
Yeah,
then,
I mean, the camera movement up from the newspaper to their dumbfounded faces definitely has like a comedic, we are just a crew, not a proper family, because we're finding out from the newspapers, oh no, we whacked the wrong guy.
yeah, very, very going back to the old sitcom callback we used to always bring up. But yeah, very sitcom-y. And so Tony's draining the pool, and I mean the pool's been very important, and here we are coming at the end. I mean, obviously, it's probably related to the not only the weather, but AJ did try to drown himself in that pool, hiding his belt, getting rid of the big pool, so he can't jump in there. And of course, it's always been very close to Tony's take on his family and his fear of loss between the ducks and how that was their home. But now here he is draining the water from it, and Janice shows up, and this is where we get some news about Junior, and he's running out of money. And, is Tony going to help? Of course not. I don't think so. What does he throw, like a $5 bill or something?
Yeah. Yeah. It's weird because it's like the whole episode's been showing like Bobby's in the in crowd. He's like one of the three making decisions and making things happen. And then this is kind of like a step back because Tony's yelling after her about like oh, he's worried about Uncle June who tried to kill me or whatever. And it's almost like that we just reverse it in order to make it more shocking when he dies or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you feel? Because she could have come and asked about that anyway, I guess, but I don't know. He never would have said yes to that.
Well, I think it's also, I do think it does tie into AJ's facility a bit and how he's paying that bill. But it also just it's another person, especially for focusing on Tony and people in his life. Chris is gone. Bobby's about to be gone. Junior's kind of been gone, but this is just solidifying that's not going to be changing anytime soon. There's no, even going back to like Livia, putting her in a retirement community, like he's not that guy anymore.
Yeah. And like you said, the pool obviously is like one of the main thematic touchstones where not only are the ducks gone, there's also now no water. And I mean the ducks as in his family, and now because I thought when AJ looked out the window and looked at it, I just thought, wow, what a callback of him looking at the pool, and then he tries to drown himself in it, and I'm like, damn, double callback. And now they're getting rid of the water, so there's just an empty hole in the ground where once there was a family, just like the Sopranos.
Yep. And Silvio comes, gives Tony the news, and they don't go down. They don't go downstairs this time. They go in the garage. It looks like, but this is where Tony's like, "All right, we need to get the word out. We got to tell everyone. Everyone's got to lam it, I suppose, because imminent attack." And it telegraph. The Bobby thing's so telegraphed, but like that's what makes it more intense, I guess, or suspenseful because
because it builds up and you're just shouting at the screen like, put down the stupid fucking train.
Yeah, he leaves his fucking cell phone in the car. I remember a time when you would just leave your phone somewhere. That would never. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got to go look at like an $8,000 train card or whatever. And I guess maybe this scene is here for you to go, yeah, maybe he deserves to be shot spending that money on that train card. People are starving, man. Bobby, come on.
Well, I think it's also a nice Because, I mean, what we've seen of Bobby since has been more cold and a little different. So it's also kind of a nice reminder that lovable lug is still there somewhat. And he's even a little like when the guy brings up his kid and he's like, my kid doesn't like these. Like, but I feel like he's a little bummed about that, but it's still something special that he likes. These dumb little trains. I mean, I have a lot of dumb things I collect and maybe spend too much money on, so I can relate. And then, this is where we get the title from, right? It's the Blue Comet is the train that he's buying. Yeah, it's a passenger train. Is operated Central Railroad in New Jersey. Ran between Atlantic City and Jersey City from 1929 to 1941. The interior and the train's locomotive and passenger car, as well as interior, stylized in blue. And he's buying the Blue Comet model. Decides to go for it. $8,000. That is insane, though.
Yeah, it's not. You can stay in like a psychiatric facility for like a week for that.
Yeah.
But this scene is, it's wonderfully put together and edited because, like we said, it's telegraphed in order for them to build up the tension of it. Because even watching it, if you're like, shit's about to go down, but it's also like totally Sopranos to subvert your expectations and have Bobby like survive, and Tony gets shot, and the last episode's all about Bobby. Not that they would do that, but like along those lines, you'd think that he could survive. So there's a lot of tension in the scene, a lot of close-ups, like they put the camera on the train, and the train's running around as the guys are walking up, and we're seeing things through mirrors. And then when the shooting starts, even better, and we're seeing like close-ups of the little figurines in the train world.
Yeah.
It's just
it's great.
Wonderfully put together. And then, the train gets shot and he gets shot and it's just general panic and disarray. And I just love the way they shot it. Shot him, I should say.
Yep. Then they drop the gun, just leave, and that's poor Bobby. And then, then we kind of cut back to Silvio with Patsy. They're at the Bing. They're about
Wait,
Tony's...
before we move on, I got to say as well, with the end of this scene, like, it would easily be over the top because he gets shot and he falls over, and then a train goes off the tracks in slow motion and falls to the ground and crashes. And it's like something that feels so over the top, but I guess it's all the little subtle moments in The Sopranos that allows these things to work so well as well, if that makes sense at all.
Yeah, no, I agree. Or, they stop just short of having the train fall on him.
Yes.
Like when it goes off the track and it fall on his dead body. Like, oh, here's your train, motherfucker.
Yep. And like you said, we go to Silvio and Patsy. And Silvio's packing up shop, and like they're hightailing it out of there. Let's go. And shit just starts going down like crazy. And at this, like originally, I thought Silvio's dead, but then they say he's in the hospital, and I'm not sure it's confirmed in this episode. So I guess we'll have to leave him off the counter for now, anyway. But fucking.
I almost forgot. We do need to add
Bobby.
We need to add Bobby to the counter. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Are you doing it?
Yeah. Here we go.
Cazzata malanga!
So now we're at 78 to 18.
Silvio looks extremely dead when they pull up and like in or there's a shot of when he's like in the car. I think they even look in on him and check like, yep, he looks super dead. But they do say he's in the hospital. I don't think it's confirmed this episode.
Yeah,
so I guess we gotta leave it.
They say he's in a coma or potentially in like a permanent coma or something like that. So, but you're right. The way the shot is, and they drive by, he looks so dead.
Well, speaking of people who look dead, what about that motorcyclist? Is he going on the board?
Yeah, and the Sopranos session book like focuses on this thing of how when the shootout happens, you see like the strippers and the patrons and everything, they're watching, and then like when the guys turn to them, they run away. But then when the guy in the motorcycle crashes and they're back outside watching, like they came back out, they got to see like this part of it too. And they get into this big thing about like, oh, that's us, we're the audience, we just want to see the bad stuff happen. But I just thought it was a funny little bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the motorcycle thing thematically just ties together with how regular people are always the ones
Yes.
suffering the most from all of this bullshit going on, which is something we've seen consistently throughout. So I think besides just adding a bit of random chaos, it also emphasizes that again, that guess what? Tony's still fine at the end of this episode, but some guy who was in the wrong place is dead now, probably. I'm gonna say he's dead, Jim. I want him on the counter. That's just me, though. Because he
Yeah.
gets hit by a car as well.
He does get run over, doesn't he?
He does.
Do we put him on the
Very.
counter?
I don't know. Wikipedia said he was dead, but what does Wikipedia know?
Ah, they do call him. Well, we didn't even put the father and the mistress on the counter. We got to put them on there too, don't we?
There's just too many deaths, Jim. I'm in mourning. I can't keep track of it all. Yes, 2 deaths for the Ukrainian dad and daughter.
But if we got to put the motorcycle guy too.
Let's do
So
it.
we got to put 3. We got to put 3 more deaths real quick. Bear with us.
Gazzada malanga! Gazzada malanga! Gazzada malanga!
All right.
It's definitely one of the deadliest episodes of The Sopranos, which I guess is what everyone's been waiting for, as we referenced at the start.
Yeah, I've been spacing. I've been dropping the ball on death counters because I completely forgot about the stupid mistress and mistress dad. Because they're like, no question, they have to go up. The motorcyclist reminded me, but I'm like, yeah, you know what? That motorcyclist, he's dead. And basically, Silvio's dead. I'm sure there's just a thing where David Chase is like, nah, I love Stevie Van Zandt so much. Like, I'll put him in the hospital, but I could never kill him.
All right. Well, I don't know, Jim.
Yeah, we'll see. You never know.
I want to wait for the next episode, and then we'll probably put him on the counter. But yeah, when I did text you originally, this is so depressing to me picture, it was like, Bobby, Sil! Because I was tearing my hair out. Like, don't let my calm demeanor now fool you. Yeah. I was not happy with all this stuff going down.
And Sil just really puts it over the top. Like, Bobby, obviously, it's heartbreaking because, he's always been more of like a lovable lug. But Sil, like, he's been there from the beginning, and it's just it really feels like things are ending when you see poor Sil in the car like that. So yeah, it's rough goings.
A feeling that's reinforced as we go into the scene of Tony coming home and having to have this conversation with Carmela that she's probably imagined having a bunch of times, and he's imagined having a bunch of times, where he basically goes, right, we're gonna have to leave now because people are trying to kill me, and I'm gonna send you guys somewhere, and I'm gonna go somewhere, and don't worry, it'll all just settle down. And this is where we get AJ as well being very depressed. Tony pulls him around, throws some clothes at him, tells him to pack or whatever. So
Charmaine's looking at their Italy pictures. I guess they had a lost roll of film. Remember rolls of film?
Yes.
And I do like that. Like, it's intercut with that, and then she, kind of gets the gist of what's happening. And, Tony has to say, like, oh, they don't, families are off limits. But it's like, yeah, but who knows? Who knows? Phil might decide maybe families aren't off limits. They're technically not a family. They're a glorified crew. Yep. Tony and Carmela and Meadow and AJ, they're not a family. Okay. Glorified cousins, if you will. But yeah, and going back to AJ here in this scene, because it's like, I get it. I mean, he's going through stuff. We know he's going through real things, but he also, at this point, is self-aware enough of who Tony is. I mean, it was season 1 when he got the basic gist of it. He's lived in this life a long time. Things are real now, and people's lives are in danger. We don't have time for you to wallow in yourself and make it about you. So, yeah, throw him around, throw some clothes on him. Let's get the fuck out of here.
When he says this, like, he says, like, Uncle Bobby's dead, and it's just sinking in, and then he says, this is really depressing to me. Even with that, it's kind of like, yeah, it's fucking, because Tony's then is like, yeah, he was a good guy. And then AJ goes, I was already having so much trouble maintaining.
Yes,
like, I was already this, and I was already that. And so I don't, you can't really blame Tony for whipping him around and that, throwing some clothes at him. Though I would hope for him to say something like, it's not about you. Like, you kind of want to get that, but instead he just yells at him that he won't need no sandals or resort wear because you're going somewhere bad.
And then what? They go to
So there's a last shot there when Tony looks at the computer, and they've been really obsessed with like what is AJ watching on the news and on the internet, and I guess he's just looking at news again and a global terrorism analysis and whatever. And I think that shot and the look that Tony has afterwards, because we're always going to remember about the containers and how obsessed he got with them for a little bit, Tony. So it's got to be something there where, again, he's the echo of himself in AJ. And I feel like that's even more of a justification for him internally to sort of throw AJ around a bit because he, dislikes himself and his way of thinking in the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. Because he's looking at it, and it's all about China and force modernization, doctrine and training, global terrorism analysis, China briefing. And it completely ties in with. We've always talked about how AJ is Tony. So for these people that are always like, AJ's such a pussy, bro. It's like, yeah, but that's because Tony's a pussy. Like, yeah. I know you think he's so tough and cool, but he's a pussy. And we all are.
Agreed. So what happens after that? I think they just pack up some food and shit and go to a house.
They go to the old Johnny Sack house, which is now the Janice and Bobby house. But, they're reacting to Bobby's poor kids are stuck with Janice. They lost their mom, and now you're like, that's got to be never mind just having Janice as your stepmom, but just in general, if all of a sudden you're with a step parent, it's like, ugh, you're not my mom. You know?
And then you have one sibling who is their child for reals.
Yes, that's right.
Weird shit. But Tony does the same thing with Paulie, and like we were talking about, like lost my train of thought there about Paulie and that they just kind of do the same thing. Oh yeah, and because we were talking about who's really left if you take out the top three, and basically there's Paulie. There's this guy who's a bit more pudgy, who I don't know the name of, and that's like it. And I'm like, this is the crew? Are these the men with which you would have me defend America, Mr. Congress? Like, what the fuck? So they just go to this house, abandoned house. Is this Tony's mom's house? Or
I thought
no?
that for a second too, but I guess not. Or is it?
It wouldn't really make sense to go there.
Yeah.
On Wikipedia, it just says it's an old suburban safe house. I believe that more. I don't remember what ended up happening in there, but I mean, there's like a cardboard cutout of Syl there, so I think it's almost like Syl's with them,
Yeah.
But they're just, I guess, using it for storage or like safe house stuff or whatever. And they like order a pizza, and Tony goes to bed with a shotgun or whatever.
Yeah, because, I mean, I don't even see, like, Muscles Marinara's not there. Where's Benny? Benny's not there. Where's Carlo? Jesus.
Carlos is there.
Oh, Carlo is there? All right. Oh, no, yeah, you're right. Carlo is there. I was.
He's the guy who suggests the pizza.
Yeah, good idea. Good idea, Carlo.
Yes, and I said shotgun or whatever, but I'm pretty sure he takes out the gun that Bobby gave him for his birthday, and he's sort of cradling that. What a nice symbolic goodbye to Bobby.
I didn't make that connection at first, but yeah, when I was thinking about it after, I was like, oh yeah, that is the gift. I mean, he does, and they do cut back to that. There's that quick flashback where you probably don't hear it when it happens. So, did Bobby hear it? Did he know?
Yes, which I think is our callback in reference to prepare us for the inevitable cut to black, which we'll get into, not next episode, because next episode we're talking about episode 1 of season 1, just to kind of prolong the process and basically analyze and get a feel for where were we then, where are we now, how has AJ changed, how has Tony changed, has anyone really changed, all this stuff in next week's episode.
Yes, yeah, so... yeah, I'm getting goosebumps, getting excited for the final episode. But yes, we're gonna prolong that just a little bit, as Jacob said. We're gonna be Tony laying in bed with our assault rifle for just a little bit longer. And we're gonna, you know what? We're gonna be Tony as he drifts off to sleep and has a dream of the pilot before we wake up in the finale. So
I gotta say, like, I don't know. It's weird. It's been a process. It's been a real long process. And thanks for not spoiling it, everyone. Because when a huge show like this is actually on TV, it's like a huge cultural moment, and the ending of it is always like a massive thing. And I mean, maybe I'm getting emotional ahead of time, but it's been really great getting to have this together with everyone following along for the ride. And I always figured I missed out on The Sopranos, Even one summer a few years ago, two close friends of mine, they started watching it together, and I was supposed to be there, and I missed out on that too. And I just kind of figured, I missed the ride. He's like, what am I going to do? Sit down and watch The Sopranos and then go like, oh my God, can you believe this thing from The Sopranos to myself? Like have this whole experience and then just do nothing with it. Don't talk to anyone about it, or just, why is this weirdo Jacob wanting to talk about The Sopranos? It's been like 10 years. But yeah, I was that weirdo, and thanks for being weird with me and for coming along and everything. And please do send your thoughts on the finale to showswhatyouknowshow@gmail.com.
Yeah, that means it was meant to be. That just means it was meant to be, because it's like you weren't meant to watch it with those two friends. Yeah. And you just knew, like you had a feeling in the back of your head, it's like, I'm not ready yet. There's going to be a time for me in The Sopranos, so we'll get there.
So true.
So yeah, thanks everyone for listening. As we mentioned at the top of the show, please send any emails to showswhatyouknowshow@gmail.com. You can hit us up at showswhatyouknow on Twitter. That's showswhat letter U, not the word you, know on Twitter, because there's a character limit. So I know it's kind of hard, but you can find it. And, of course, you can find our other shows at showswhatyouknow.com.
Indeed. Follow us at Jacob Burrows and at Jim Darko as well. Why not?
Yes.
And besides that, I just have one more thing to say, Jim.
Ooh, what's that?
Cut to black.